Today I'd like to talk about our art style and why we made the decisions to make the game look the way it does. So firstly, if you're unfamiliar with Edward Gorey, who's the main inspiration for art style, he was a illustrator, but also I don't know if you call him a novelist, but I think he himself he thought of himself as more of a writer than an illustrator, but he wrote these short little books which kind of seem like they're children's books, but they're really morbid and disturbing, and usually they're about people dying or bad things happening to good people, and they're definitely not kid-friendly. And I actually had my first taste of Edward Gorey as a child. My sister and I got this gorgeous pop-up book called The Dwindling Party, and it was this amazing pop-up book, but it was about a family getting killed by monsters. So let that thing sink in. They make this gorgeous children's pop-up book about a family getting killed by monsters. It was so weird as a child because I loved the book, I loved what it looked like, but I just couldn't understand why it was so disturbing, why these people were dying. Like, why are these people dying? I don't understand it. And it definitely stood out as something, you know, significant. And later I used to watch the PBS show Mystery with my parents, and they had this gorgeous Edward Gorey animated intro that I absolutely loved. So Edward Gorey has been sort of a presence in my life and an influence to me, so I feel like it's really great that we can, you know, make something influenced by him and really show off the sort of awesomeness of his art style. But I guess some better questions are, why do this game in the Edward Gorey style? And I think there's a few reasons why it's such a great fit. Firstly, I think tying back into sort of that feeling of being a kid or that sort of childlike state is really powerful, because I'm not really afraid of monsters or ghosts or any sort of common fear in the conventional sense presently, but I remember being really scared as a kid. There were a lot of things that scared me, and so I think sort of subconsciously saying, you know, get in that mind frame, remind people of what being a child is like, is sort of puts them at a more vulnerable state. And I think the recently kickstarted Among the Sleep is really trying to do just that. But also, I think the amazing thing about Edward Gorey's art style is the lighting, the way he does the shading, and I feel like, at least in the game, we're trying to make that lighting is such a key component of creating the mood, and so sort of designing our art style around doing light and shadows the way Edward Gorey would draw them has been really exciting, and I think has really paid off well. The other thing that I think is great is, because we picked a black and white art style, we can highlight the interactable objects or interactive objects with color. So one of the problems with making sort of an adventure or any sort of game where you have to pick up items and interact with objects in the world is that you need to indicate to the player which objects you can interact with. I remember playing, I think it was Blade Runner, for the PC, the adventure game by Westwood, and you had to basically just pixel hunt. You had to click on everything on the screen in the hopes that you would stumble upon the thing that you're able to pick up. And so there's other solutions for this, like in Borderlands they have the little colored trail that sticks up, and other games give things a halo or some other thing. But I think the nice thing about the way we're doing it and highlighting things in color is that it doesn't really destroy immersion in that you're not drawing something that wouldn't be there in the game world, but instead you're just drawing it differently and making it stand out. And I think that works really well in our game environment. And I think we also highlight a lot of stuff, and blood is red, and I think it really adds sort of an extra level to that, because it's oh, look at this blood, look at it, stands out. But also I think it makes it so we're not really, you know, the disgusting sort of violence, you know, where you watch some crazy horror slasher torture porn film and you feel really sick to your stomach. I think because we're keeping with a very stylized art, it's not, we don't really run that risk. And then also, we're doing it basically with 2D art and drawings just because we're trying to create something that it doesn't take forever to create the content for. One of the things I talked about in my Postmortem Retrograde is basically how long the art took us and how hard it was to do these fully animated 3D worlds. But there's tons of difficulties to doing 2D art, and there's some definite advantages of doing 3D art, but I think on the whole it was a much better decision to do our art 2D based, and we do a bunch of effects and cool other things in 3D, but I think it's easier to create attractive and interesting content with the art style we have. And finally, I think it's important because our games stand out. If you see a screenshot of Neverending Nightmares, you know it's Neverending Nightmares. We're unique looking, and I think that's really important when you're trying to establish, you know, why your game is special. If it looks special, you're already, you know, doing something right in that category. You're sort of one step up in terms of, you know, gaining that mind share.